Hey everybody, Jason Blaha here with Ice Cream Fitness. It's Monday again and I'm going to answer a few of your questions in a Q&A. But hold on, let me give you guys a bicep shot first. Okay, let's get straight into those questions. Jason, what formula do you recommend a person use to figure out TDEE, which stands for Total Daily Energy Expenditure? I personally like to use Catch McCardle, mainly because it has an allowance for rough body fat percentage, and therefore you can factor in lean body mass a little better. But any of the formulas are good, and the idea behind these formulas anyways, because you'll never get the activity factor perfect on them, is to get you in the ballpark so that you can figure out close to what your maintenance actually is so that you can adjust from there to bulk or cut. And it's always important to remember that these are just estimates to get you close, and that your maintenance will change over time fairly quickly. If you've been bulking or cutting for more than a month, you will actually find that your maintenance will actually change a noticeable amount over that period of time. So again, these are just to give you a rough estimate. Okay, next question. All right, this is in reference to my 5x5 novice program again. You said that during a cut, progression is slower. Only add weight when you are able to complete all sets for 2 sessions for any exercise. Take bench press, for example. You would complete 2 sessions at 200 pounds and add weight to 205 pounds. For rows, how would you do this, since there are 2 different weights on A and B? Okay, in my novice program for cutting, yes, that is what you would do on the bench press. On the rows, I would say because workout B is always going to be based off of workout A is 10% lower, you should probably do it after every second A workout. However, you could easily base it off of a single workout of that, and because you're going to be weaker when you get to the rows on workout B than A, you can still count it if you successfully complete that with 10% less than A. But in all honesty, a program like mine has built-in fail-safes to keep you from progressing too fast. And the only reason I recommend slower progression on a cut on this program is because your strength is going to increase slower. However, if you choose to go faster or slower, you're still going to get to the same numbers a month or 2 months into the program. You're still going to be lifting the same amount of weight no matter what you do, because I have built in, just like it should be done on any good routine, I have built-in fail-safes to keep you in the right range of weight you should be using for your current progress level. And this is done through the weight resets. It's going to force you to stay in the right rough estimate of where you need to be on the weights if you're doing the resets correctly. So there's no need to overcomplicate this one. Okay, next question. This may be splitting hairs, but what is your opinion on me running plus 25 carbs on leg days and minus 25 carbs on rest days, keeping gains as lean as possible without going to extremes? Would you say fuck it and run the same calories every day, and that weekly net balance is far more important? Thanks in advance. In regards to that, I would say yes. Say fuck it and run the same calories every day unless you just personally feel more drained on certain days than others and you need a little more food, and then you can make up for it the next day. But I wouldn't plan a protocol like that unless you're doing some sort of very advanced recomposition protocol that's in which case you're generally following someone else's program or you've designed it yourself, in which you might run different calories on different days. However, for the most part, staggering around your calories and macros based upon your different sessions is really overthinking it. It's mental masturbation, because you have to keep in mind it is netly weak balance that matters at the end of the day. And the human body doesn't even work completely off of a 24-hour digestive process. Yes, you absorb the majority of the calories from a meal the day you eat it, but not all of them. And you can still be absorbing calories and nutrients from food that you eat up to 48 to 72 hours from a fairly large meal. So really trying to micromanage single days like that is just creating extra work for yourself and complexity that doesn't need to be there. It doesn't serve a purpose. There's just no need in being that exact with trying to stagger around days day to day. And I really don't know why people try to do this. There's no real point to it. Okay, next question. Can you go into more detail on what a recomp is and how to do it? I feel like it's one of those words everyone just tosses around and no one actually bothers explaining it or talks about how it's useful. All I know is lose fat, gain muscle while staying approximately the same weight. Okay, this one is a bit of a tricky one because in all honesty, recomposition is actually, for the non-novice, is extremely difficult. And in my experience, the majority of people who try it fail. Most people I know who try to recomp, who do it without drugs, generally spend 6 months completely spinning their wheels, making no real gains. And if they do recomp, it's very, very mild. And so I generally don't recommend it for most people. And it's important to keep in mind that you will get slower gains even if you do it perfectly on a recomposition. Let's say that you recomp for an entire year versus doing a reasonably lean bulk followed by a cut for the same 12 months. At the end of that 12 months, you will probably have more muscle mass, considerably more muscle mass gained than you would have had you tried to recomp to get the same results. So it is going to be slower, but the idea is that it is nice for some people to do that, particularly people who need to stay in shape year round for some reason or they really want to. But you do need to keep in mind you're going to make slower progress as a result of it. How I would personally go about it is I would step back first of all and reassess all of my training. And if I was going to try a recomp, I would recommend that you make sure that 100% of your training is absolutely efficient stimulus. And what I mean by that is you don't have room for a lot of fluff in there. You don't have room for a lot of conditioning work. The reason for it being you need to make sure that your training itself is very heavily geared to keep you in an anabolic environment and to promote continual progressive overload without a caloric surplus to pull it off. So that means that you don't have room for any sort of high intensity cardio. I would not do any sort of HIIT interval training. I would be leery of more than a small amount of conditioning work at all other than some resistance-based GPP work. And any extra just activity you do, make sure it's low enough intensity that it's not going to impact your performance by cross-training muscle fibers or by cutting into your recovery so that you can focus primarily on the weightlifting. That's one thing I would absolutely stress when you're doing any type of recomp, because if you're doing that other activity, you're going to fuck yourself in the long run. It's going to make it harder. The next thing I would do is on a recomp is this is a case where I would stagger calories, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it the way that was listed in the last question. I would recommend something like running a deficit for a number of days in a row, up to 6 days, and maybe once a week or once every fourth day or fifth day, go ahead and do a very high carb refeed to where you push those numbers up to where you push yourself to maintenance or to a very, very small surplus for the week based upon your refeed days. And that way you're giving yourself enough extra push on some days to stimulate better growth. You're giving yourself a little bit of a super compensation effect with glycogen, and you'll be able to gain at least a little bit of muscle mass while you're losing body fat most of the week through the small caloric deficit. And that's how I would personally go about it if I wanted to recomp. Okay, next question. Anyway, I want to work out before school at 5 to 6 a.m. On a cut, what would you recommend I eat? I can make a meal the previous night and eat it the next morning because I really don't have time to cook. Oatmeal, maybe? All right. First of all, the thing you've got to keep in mind with this, I'm trying to promote the idea of flexible dieting, which means that you don't need to eat specific foods that someone has given you off of a list or recommended to you, or even the same foods every day. And that as long as you're hitting your target numbers, your macros and your micros, and you even have a lot of flexibility with those, that you'll get the results you want. So my question to you would become, just like with anyone else who asks me what they should eat when they want to lose weight or anything else, I don't know what foods you love. I have no way to tell you what foods that you enjoy and you personally find satiating. And I personally don't eat breakfast. I do intermittent fasting, so I actually train on an empty stomach. And I'm not saying that everyone should do that or that it's even the best approach for everybody, because it isn't. However, it does highlight the point that it isn't that critical that you focus on pre-workout nutrition or having a meal right before you train if you don't want one, or that it needs to be specific foods. However, I will make a couple of recommendations really quick. If you're in a hurry, you don't really cook, and you want to get some carbs pre-workout, I would say something like frozen pizza that you could do in the microwave, cereal and milk, or even some Pop-Tarts would be a perfectly acceptable choice, as long as they fit into your macros and micros for the day, and you want a little bit of quick energy that's easy to consume, easy to fix, and to get that into your system before you train. Those would all be reasonable choices. Or the oats that you listed. Honestly, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Eat what you prefer for that, and whatever works for you. There's no need to have specific suggestions from someone on that. Okay, I hope this has been informative for everybody. Hold on, let me give you guys one more bicep shot. And keep those questions coming, and maybe I will answer yours next week. I'll talk to you next time.